The dishwasher finished its cycle and beeped exactly 3 times. I didn't move. The beep sounded weird without her humming. She always hummed when she unloaded the dishes. Usually something tuneless, like a half-remembered commercial jingle. Now the silence felt staged, like a paused video I was too afraid to unpause. At 7:12 p.m., my phone buzzed. Just a message bubble on the lock screen. I'll be home late tonight. She didn't even put a period. Just that sentence, like it was borrowed from a stranger. I stared at it for 6 minutes and 42 seconds. And then I got up, walked over to the little gray bowl next to the door, the one with a crack on the side that we never fixed, and dropped my key into it. Not out of spite, not even sadness. Just because. What's the point of holding a key to a place you're already locked out of? I spent the next hour opening drawers and closing them again. I wasn't looking for anything. I just wanted to hear the sound of something obeying me. I found one of her socks in the silverware drawer. No idea how it got there. She hadn't looked me in the eyes in 4 days. Not really. She'd glance around me, the wall behind, the coffee mug, the dog, her phone, but never through me. Like she was reserving that last piece of honesty for someone else. I didn't cry. I don't think I had the energy. But I did eat a cold hot dog straight from the fridge, and that felt like rock bottom. Then I saw it. A receipt on the counter. Folded. Faded. Nearly torn at the corner. Bar Atlas. 2 cocktails, 1 small plate. $42.70. Timestamp. 9:43 p.m. last Thursday. Funny thing about Thursday. She said she worked late. Sent a photo of her presentation setup. Only, the laptop in the photo had a different time on the screen. 7:18 p.m. Yeah, I zoomed in. Yeah, I screenshotted it. Yeah, I sent it to myself and titled it, "I'm Not Crazy." PNG. I told myself maybe she just needed space. Maybe the cocktails were with a client. Maybe the perfume that wasn't hers was a coworker's. Maybe the long black hair on our pillow wasn't what it looked like, even though Dahlia's hair is auburn and shoulder length. Maybe the universe was just glitching, but then I smelled it. Her jacket, still hanging on the hook by the door. It smelled like hotel hallway. You know that fake citrus and carpet cleaner smell that tries to cover up cheap decisions? That. I think I stood there for 20 minutes, just inhaling betrayal. At 10:44 p.m., I heard her key in the lock. Except, she didn't have it anymore. I had left my key in the bowl. She never noticed it was gone. She walked in like everything was fine. Laughed softly, like she'd just gotten off the phone with someone funny. Didn't even see me on the floor. And then she went to the bathroom and closed the door. And locked it. She never locks it. That's when I opened her laptop. I didn't even know I knew her password until my fingers typed it automatically. What I found in her photo library. Let's just say, I stopped doubting myself and started doubting everything else. There was a folder on her desktop labeled Notes. That alone wouldn't have stood out. Dahlia took notes on everything. Grocery lists, wine pairings, which side of her face she preferred in photos. But this one hadn't been touched in weeks. Except, the last modified date said otherwise. I opened it and found dozens of little word files, most of them with boring names like June Recap or Client Dinner Thoughts. But one file near the bottom, titled Only Temp, was different. No capital letter. No context. Just hidden in plain sight. I hesitated. For a second, I even hovered my mouse over the little red X in the corner. But my hand didn't listen to my head. When I opened the file, I didn't find spreadsheets. I didn't find anything professional at all. I found poetry. Or maybe it was song lyrics. I couldn't tell. It was messy, jagged, emotional, definitely not written for me. I recognized her voice in it, but only pieces. The words bled like she was writing in real time, during the affair, or maybe just after it. I read one line over and over. He holds me like he's borrowing time. You hold me like I'm already yours. That's the moment I knew I couldn't come back from this. I stared at that sentence until the words meant nothing, just shapes, lines, and curves on a screen that refused to let me look away. I felt like a kid reading his own obituary, alive, but erased. I didn't touch her laptop again. Instead, I went to the kitchen, pulled out the good whiskey, the one she gifted me and secretly hated, and poured exactly 2 fingers into a chipped glass. No ice. No music. I just stood there in the dark, the only light coming from the stove clock. She still hadn't come out of the bathroom. At some point, I dozed off on the couch. I didn't mean to, but grief makes you tired in weird places. I woke up sometime past 2 a.m., my neck sore, my mouth dry. The bathroom door was open now. The light was off. She was in bed. I walked into the bedroom as quietly as I could, not to avoid waking her, but because I was afraid of what I'd see if she turned around. But she didn't. She was on her side, facing the wall. Her phone was clutched in her hand like it was part of her. I wanted to take it. I really did. But I didn't. That's the part one hate most. I still respected her privacy. Even after everything. Even when she didn't respect me. I just stood there like an idiot, watching her sleep, wondering if she was dreaming of him. Wondering if she smiled for him in ways I hadn't seen in months. Wondering if the laugh I used to earn was now someone else's currency. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. Made coffee. Played with the dog. Asked if I'd seen her red flats. I told her no. She kissed my cheek and left. And I stood in the kitchen, wondering how long someone can pretend before they forget they're pretending. That afternoon, I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed her. Not dramatically. No trench coat or sunglasses. Just my regular car, 3 spaces back, staying quiet, watching as she drove not to her office, but past it. Through downtown. Past the turn for Bar Atlas. Past the coffee shop we used to go to on Sundays. And then out. Way out, into the suburbs. She parked in front of a small white house with green shutters and a wreath on the door that said hello, in cursive. I pulled over half a block away and watched her walk up to the door without knocking. She had a key. I watched her go inside. She was in there for 3 hours. I didn't move the entire time. I didn't even pee. I just sat there, hands clenched, chest tight, trying not to vomit from my own heartbeat. When she came out, she was laughing. With him. He was taller than me. Of course he was. Tan skin. Hair that looked like it was cut yesterday. He leaned in and kissed her forehead like he'd done it 100 times. She didn't flinch. Didn't even check over her shoulder. That's when I realized something else. Something worse. She wasn't cheating on me. I was the side character in her life. That night, I didn't say anything. I made dinner. She barely touched it. We watched half a movie. She fell asleep halfway through. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. Because part of me needed to know more. Because part of me still loved her. And because part of me wasn't sure who I was anymore without her lies holding me together. I started labeling my days by what I pretended not to see. Monday, I pretended not to see her delete a text before showing me a meme. Tuesday, I pretended not to hear her whisper laughing in the hallway with the door closed. Wednesday, I pretended not to notice her clothes smelled like a detergent we don't use. Thursday, I pretended not to exist. It's strange what becomes normal when you don't scream about it. She thought I was slipping into depression. Started offering pity gestures. Do you want to get lunch this weekend? You should see your brother soon. Try meditating. It's helped me stay grounded. Dahlia suddenly had a wellness script memorized, like she'd watched a TED Talk on how to keep a man distracted while you're screwing someone else in a suburb 40 minutes away. I responded how I always did, mumbled sure, and did nothing. But inside I was inventorying her life. I started documenting. Quietly. Secretly. Not because I was planning to confront her, at least not yet, but because I needed to know. I needed to build a picture big enough that even she couldn't gaslight me out of it. So I built a little private archive. I created a hidden folder on my work laptop, disguised it as a dead project named v3_system_archive, and filled it with screen recordings, exported text logs, time-stamped photos, and a spreadsheet I titled, stupidly, Truth Clock. Every column was a day. Every row was a detail. Left for work at 8:34. Came back at 11:51 p.m. Hair curled, makeup intact. Call log showed 46 minutes to Cleo. Cleo moved to Texas in March. The spreadsheet was cold, clinical, lifeless, but it gave me structure. And structure is a beautiful thing when your reality is falling apart. The strange part? The more I tracked her, the more I started to understand something even worse than cheating. She wasn't in love with him either. It wasn't about romance. It wasn't even about thrill. It was detachment. Like she was playing both sides of her life just to see how long she could get away with it. Like we were 2 old books she kept on different shelves, reading chapters of each when she got bored of the other. I started noticing how her eyes never stayed still anymore. Even when she was looking at me, she wasn't looking into me. Like she was practicing eye contact, but forgot why people do it in the first place. You know that feeling when someone touches your back and you know they're not really touching you, just making contact with a shape they recognize? That was her kiss now. That was her good night. That was everything. One night, about a week after I followed her to the White House with the wreath, she left her laptop open in the kitchen. I wasn't even planning to snoop. I'd already done enough of that to fill a hard drive. But curiosity is a sneaky bastard. It doesn't knock. It walks right in, wearing your shirt. There was a document open. Unsaved. No title. Just a page with half-written thoughts like she'd been journaling and walked away. This is what it said. I don't know what I want. I miss being missed. I hate how quiet he is. Sometimes I wish he would just yell at me so I can feel real again. The other one doesn't ask questions. That makes it easier. But easy doesn't mean better. I think I'm disappearing and no one is trying to stop me. I copied it, word for word, pasted it into my archive. Then I did something I still don't understand. I made her tea. She came home at 11:09 p.m. that night. Tired, hair messy, shirt slightly wrinkled in a way that screamed rushed undressing. I said nothing. I just handed her the cup, smiled, and said, "Chamomile. Helps you sleep." She smiled back. "Thanks, Len. That's sweet." And just like that, she went back to being mine for 10 minutes. I think that's when it clicked. This wasn't about catching her anymore. This was about control. Not in the aggressive way. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to confront her in the driveway. I wasn't going to pull the fire alarm at her office or send photos to her family. No, I was going to become the quiet narrator of her unraveling. And when it was over, she wouldn't even know when it started. The funny thing is, once you stop chasing the lie gets lazy. It stops hiding. It slips. Not loudly. Not in the way it shatters like glass. More like, it frays. Threads pull. Corners peel back. And you don't even have to tug. You just wait long enough, and gravity does the rest. That's how I learned his name. There was no dramatic discovery. No secret message or lipstick smudge collar. Just a grocery receipt. One I almost threw away. It was sitting at the bottom of the passenger side door in her car. She asked me to grab her sunglasses, and I bent down, and there it was, folded once, grease stain on the corner. Total, $63.88. But what caught me wasn't the amount. It was the store membership code printed underneath the barcode. I typed the code into the store's digital receipt lookup. The store had an app for managing loyalty points. Public-facing. Too convenient. Logged in using her email and used the forgot password function. Guess which password reset went straight to her backup email? A backup she forgot I set up for her when we first moved in together. From there, it was effortless. Not only did I get the purchase history, groceries, wine, razors, allergy meds, I also got the shipping address associated with her rewards profile. And it wasn't ours. It was the White House with the wreath. That was the confirmation. But the name? The name came from something dumber. A pizza box. One night, while she was out with coworkers, I parked near the house and waited with the windows down. I brought a bag of grapes and a thermos of coffee like I was birdwatching. Around 8:30, a delivery driver pulled up. No doorbell. No knock. Just opened the gate, walked to the side entrance, and dropped the box on a little metal patio table. I waited for him to leave, then walked over like I owned the place. On the receipt stapled to the box, it said, "Order for Mason. Instructions, don't knock. Just leave it." That name hit harder than it should have. I don't know why. Maybe because it sounded real. Not like a fantasy or a fling. Mason sounded solid. Like someone who builds things. Like someone with better jokes than me. Straighter teeth. Warmer eyes. A dog person. I didn't open the box. I didn't need to. I just stood there in the blue porch light, reading his name like it was printed on a headstone. And then I walked away. Over the next few days, I started threading Mason into my thinking. Quietly. Strategically. When she mentioned being tired, I asked if Mason was keeping her up too late. She froze for a half second, blinked like I'd just spoken a foreign language, then laughed and asked, "Who?" I shook my head. "No idea. Thought I heard you say that name in your sleep." Her smile twitched. Not in fear. In calculation. I knew then that she was filing that moment away. Tucking it into her internal risk log. That's what she did. Dahlia was never careless. She planned everything. Which is why this was so strange. She wasn't covering her tracks anymore. Not well. Part of her wanted to be caught. But not by me. She wanted him to catch her. To prove he cared enough to fight for her. On Thursday, I watched her pack a small bag. She said she had a branding workshop in Cedar Rapids. I knew she was lying, but I nodded anyway. Then I did something I'd never done before. I followed her all the way. 3 hours. One stop. No music. She didn't go to a hotel. She went to his house. He greeted her at the door in a hoodie and socks, like he'd just woken up from a nap in a world that hadn't been devastated. She kissed him on the mouth with the kind of softness she used to save for Sundays. I parked across the street, lowered my seat, and watched the windows glow. They ate dinner. She laughed loud, threw her head back. I hadn't heard her laugh like that in months. Then she disappeared into the hallway with him. I sat in my car and listened to the engine tick as it cooled. For the first time in this entire ordeal, I didn't cry. I didn't punch the steering wheel. I didn't scream or fall apart. I just sat there with my hands folded in my lap, as calm as a funeral. At 1:18 a.m., the bedroom light turned off. At 1:31, her phone buzzed. A text to my number. Love you. Hope you got some rest. I stared at the message until my phone dimmed. She was in bed with someone else, and still wanted to make sure her story stayed intact. That wasn't love. That was maintenance. She wasn't protecting my heart. She was preserving the lie. And so I decided it was time to rewrite the ending. Not burn it down. Not confront. Just rearrange the truth into something unignorable. There's a special kind of silence that exists when you know something other people don't. Not the giddy kind. Not the kind that makes you feel clever or superior. No, this silence is clinical. Like the silence in an operating room just before they slice something open. That was the silence I carried in the days after I learned Mason's name. I didn't shout. I didn't throw things. I didn't text her angry monologues or make veiled threats. I just existed beside her, the way you exist beside someone in an elevator. Still, civil, temporary. Only now, everything she said was cataloged like evidence. Her jokes, her excuses, her clumsy affection, her scripted guilt. She'd reach for my hand on the couch, and I'd let her hold it, not because I believed it, but because I wanted her to believe I still did. That was the entire goal now. Let her think the performance was working. Let her think I was still buying the version of her she sold me in bedtime smiles and half-asleep murmurs. Because you can't dismantle a lie until the liar has committed fully. You have to let them write the whole novel before you rip out the ending. So, I started my countdown. 7 days. That's what I gave myself. 7 days of calm. 7 days of pretending not to know. 7 days to slowly press on every fracture in her fantasy until she couldn't tell which cracks were hers and which ones were mine. Day 1, I cleaned the apartment. Top to bottom. Scrubbed the baseboards. Dusted places that hadn't been touched in years. I reorganized the kitchen cabinets by category. Canned goods in one. Dry grains in another. Even labeled them. She came home from book club to find me mopping the living room. Her heels clicked against the tile, and she actually looked startled. You okay? She asked. Just needed to feel productive, I replied. She smiled and kissed the top of my head. Told me I looked cute when I cleaned. Then walked away, humming. But I saw her face in the mirror when she passed. Worried. Uncertain. And that's when I knew my stillness was finally louder than her chaos. Day 3, I made dinner reservations for the weekend. A place she used to love before she stopped eating with me. When I told her, her eyes darted for a second, like she was calculating whether Mason had her booked. Then she nodded and said, That sounds lovely. She used the word lovely like it was a band-aid. I watched her type something into her phone 2 minutes later. A text, no doubt. Probably a cancellation. Or a rearrangement. Or a rain check, babe. Gotta keep up appearances. She'd become an expert at juggling hearts. What she didn't know was that the dinner wasn't about romance. It was about timing. Because every performance has a curtain call. Day 4, I started changing passwords. Not hers, mine. Netflix, bank accounts, email, Dropbox. Every shared login we had, I locked it down. Quietly. Without revoking her access. Just changing the keys behind the door. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was a quiet prelude. A whisper to the universe that I was detaching from the machine. I even started packing boxes. Slowly. Like I was cleaning out for spring. Just my things. Books. Old sweaters. USB drives. I told her I was decluttering. She nodded without asking questions. She was too busy keeping her other story intact to inspect this one. That's the thing about liars. They get lazy once they think they've won. Day 6, I left early. Told her I had a client meeting. Drove past Mason's house. Parked 2 streets over. And walked. It was early, barely past 8 a.m., but her car was there. She never parked in his driveway. Always a few houses down, like she thought that tiny act of misdirection made her clever. I watched from the sidewalk across the street. pretending to walk my non-existent dog. At 8:23 a.m., I saw her step out the front door, her hair pulled back, still damp from a shower, wearing a hoodie that definitely wasn't hers. Mason followed, kissed her forehead, handed her a coffee like it was routine. And just like that, she was back in her car, pulling away into the weekday morning like nothing had ever happened. I stood there long after she'd gone, staring at his front porch. His wreath had been replaced. A new one, white twigs with a pale green ribbon. That's how I knew she'd been back more than once. You don't get a new wreath unless you're building a new season. Day 7, she woke up smiling. She wrapped her arms around me in bed and said, "You've been really sweet this week." I told her, "You deserve it." She didn't flinch. Later that evening, as she got ready for our dinner, she asked if I liked her new perfume. I told her it reminded me of something. She asked what? I smiled. A hotel lobby. And for just a flash, half a heartbeat, her eyes widened. She turned away and laughed, brushing it off, but I saw the gears stutter behind her smile. She was trying to figure out how much I knew. That's when I knew she'd feel it. The doubt. The fear. Like a splinter you can't find, but can't stop feeling. Dinner was quiet. Not awkward. Just full of fake normal. She played the wife. I played the fool. We didn't toast. We didn't talk about the future. We just ate like strangers practicing intimacy. When we got home, she kissed me. Slowly. Carefully. Not because she missed me, but because she was trying to remember what I used to taste like. I kissed her back. Because ghosts deserve funerals, too. You don't need to kill something to bury it. Sometimes, all you have to do is stop feeding it. Just take away the attention, the benefit of the doubt, the warmth. It dies all on its own, gasping for the affection it used to take for granted. That's what I started doing to her the moment we walked back into our apartment after that dinner. She smiled at me, took off her heels by the door, said, "Tonight felt like old times." And I smiled back, but I didn't answer. No kiss, no hug, no goodnight. I just went to the sink and started washing my hands, slowly, like I could scrub off the years we wasted. Like I could purify myself with lemon-scented soap and warm water while she stood there, waiting for something that would never come again. That was the first layer, the withdrawal of validation. She didn't notice it at first. She thought I was tired, or distracted, or even full from dinner. But by the next morning, her eyes were darting, watching me like a hawk, smiling too brightly, touching my shoulder in the kitchen like we were in a commercial for almond milk. I didn't flinch. I just stepped slightly to the left and said, "You're in the way." I watched her expression flicker like a bad signal. She laughed it off again, but I could see it, tiny fractures. People like Dahlia don't shatter. They splinter, and the break always starts small. That day, I made one phone call. Just one. To a florist. I ordered a bouquet. Not for her. Not for Mason. But for the office she worked at. A small arrangement. Ivory roses. Green accents. No note. No signature. Just a card that read, "I know." That's all. It arrived at 2:11 p.m. I know because she texted me at 2:14. "Did you send me flowers? They're really nice. No name on them, though." I didn't reply. 15 minutes later, she texted again. "Was it you?" Still nothing. At 3:22, she tried calling. I let it ring. Twice. Then answered with a calm, "What's up?" There was a pause. Like she wasn't expecting me to sound normal. "I just got these flowers and I thought maybe it was you," she said, her voice trying too hard to sound casual. I replied, "Nope, not me." Silence again. The kind that's too full to breathe in. "Okay," she finally said. "Maybe they were from marketing. They've been doing this employee spotlight thing." I cut her off. "Sure." Then hung up. That night, she was quiet. Not sad. Not angry. Wary. She looked at me like I was a locked drawer she'd forgotten the key to. I kept the charade going. Made dinner. Asked her about her day. Even massaged her shoulders while she sat on the edge of the bed. And the whole time, I could feel her trying to sense the rules of this new game. She didn't realize I wasn't playing anymore. I was hosting. The next day, I sent Mason a message. No threats. No insults. No drama. Just a photo of him and her on the porch, time-stamped, with a message. "You don't know where she sleeps when she leaves." But I do. No reply. Not right away. But I saw that it was read. And more importantly, I saw when Dahlia called him 5 minutes later. I watched her from the living room as she took the call in the bedroom, her voice low, hand covering her mouth like a child telling a lie to a priest. When she came back out, She smiled too hard and said she wanted to watch a movie with me. Something light. Something stupid. We watched a comedy neither of us laughed at. The silence was the real show. By the next morning, I knew she was unraveling. Her texts were more frequent. Her eyes didn't hold contact for more than 3 seconds. She hovered behind me while I worked. Tried to get me to open up about my day. Asked if I was feeling okay. I told her, best I've felt in years. She nodded like she believed me. But her hands were shaking. And that's when I knew she felt it. The funeral was in progress. Her version of us was being buried, and I hadn't even said a word. No fight. No confrontation. Just precision cuts to the ropes she used to keep her lives from drifting apart. She started calling me babe again. Started dressing nicer around the house. Even cooked once. I watched her try to serve up intimacy like it was a peace offering. As if love was a currency she could print more of when the balance ran dry. But I didn't touch the food. I just smiled and said, smells like someone's trying to be forgiven. She froze. Then said, what's that supposed to mean? I shrugged. You tell me. And walked away. By midnight, she was crying in the bathroom. Quiet sobs, thinking I couldn't hear her through the door. I heard everything. I just didn't care anymore. It happened on a Thursday. Gray sky, lazy wind, traffic light blinking red even when no one was around. Everything about the day felt like it had been muted, like the world had decided to speak in lowercase. Even the air smelled like stale silence. Dahlia had been jittery all morning. She hovered in the kitchen, fidgeted with her phone, kept checking the hallway window like she was expecting someone or something to appear out of nowhere. I watched her, careful not to react. Just observed her like she was a painting hung crooked on a wall. You can't fix it. You just live around the tilt. At 1:36 p.m., the doorbell rang. She flinched. That's how I knew it was him. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to scroll through job listings, sipping room temperature coffee, when she poked her head around the corner and said, too quickly, did you order anything? No, I said. Did you? She didn't answer. She stood frozen for a beat too long, then walked to the door. I followed. Not close. Just enough to see her hand hover above the doorknob, as if the act of opening it could rewrite something permanent. Then she opened it. And there he was. Mason. Real. Flesh. Slightly shorter than I remembered. Hooded sweatshirt. Pale eyes. A jaw that looked stronger in pictures than in person. He didn't smile. He didn't move. He just stood there, staring at her like he was trying to find the version of her he'd been sold. Can we talk? He asked. Not angrily. Not loudly. Just like someone tired of pretending they weren't lost. I stepped into view. Mason's eyes darted to mine, and I could see it click. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't bad luck. This was architecture. I gave him a nod. Calm. Polite. Like he was a neighbor dropping off misdelivered mail. Dahlia's voice came out like a broken zipper. Mason, I told you not to come here. He didn't look at her. His eyes stayed on me. You knew, he said, not as a question. I knew, I replied. How long? Long enough to build a file. Silence again. Tense, but not explosive. 3 adults standing in the lobby of a crumbling lie, no one willing to be the first to set it on fire. Dahlia stepped between us. You both need to stop. This is insane. I never meant for any of this to. To what? I asked, finally letting my voice break into something sharper. To be exposed? To hurt? Or to be so perfectly visible that you could still pretend to be invisible? Her mouth opened, then closed. No answer. Because what answer could possibly sound sane? Mason finally spoke again. I didn't know you were still together. I tilted my head. But you knew about me. I thought you were separated. That what she told you? He nodded slowly, his jaw clenching. She said you were basically roommates now. Just coexisting. Right. That's what I am. A roommate who knows the scent of the man she showers off before coming home. That hit him. Hard. I saw it. A flinch in the spine. A twitch in the neck. His breath got shallow for half a second. Truth does that. It doesn't shout. It cuts, silently, like frostbite. Dahlia finally snapped. This is disgusting. Both of you. Standing here like I'm some object passed between hands. Like I'm the villain in your weird little war. No war, I said, stepping forward. No battle. Just a post-mortem. She laughed bitterly. You think you're some martyr now? The noble husband who suffered in silence? You've been tracking me like a stalker. You've been manipulating the narrative like some twisted playwright. And you've been performing in 2 plays, I replied. Different costumes. Same lies. You just never expected the audience to compare notes. Mason looked at her again, this time really looked. His eyes weren't angry. They were hollow. Disbelief wrapped in understanding. I don't think I ever really knew you, he said softly. You didn't, I replied for her. Neither did I. But at least now, we're all reading from the same script. She tried to speak, but whatever was coming up never made it out. Her face twisted, anger, pain, guilt, fear, all fighting for dominance. But in the end, it was defensiveness that won. It always is, with people like her. Not regret, not apology, just the need to defend the illusion until it dies completely. I just wanted to feel wanted, she said at last. A whisper. Honest, maybe, but irrelevant. We all do, I said. But not everyone burns down 2 homes to feel warm. Mason stepped back. No drama, no shouting, just a step, then another. Lose my number, he muttered to her, and left. No final glance, no goodbye, just the click of footsteps fading down the hallway like an old voicemail you no longer need to replay. She didn't cry, not yet. She just closed the door and stared at it for a long time, like she could hold it shut against everything that just unraveled. And I went back to the couch, picked up my coffee, took a sip, still lukewarm, still bitter, just like the ending she wrote for herself. She left the next morning. No long conversation, no pleading, no screaming or slamming doors. She packed in silence. I watched from the kitchen table, sipping coffee that finally tasted clean. Her movements were mechanical, folding, stacking, zipping. She didn't try to explain anything. Not anymore. I think she understood that the language we once shared had expired. She paused by the door, suitcase in hand. Looked at me one last time. I didn't mean for it to go like this, she said, barely above a whisper. I gave her a soft nod. I know. She nodded back, like that tiny sliver of grace hit harder than any argument ever could. And then she was gone. The apartment felt bigger after she left. Not empty, not cold, just honest, like a room that had finally exhaled. I spent the first day walking around barefoot, letting the silence settle. I opened every window, let the air rinse through the walls. I found little things I hadn't noticed in years. The way the floor creaked near the hallway, the faint coffee stain under the couch leg, the chip in the bedroom mirror that looked like a comma. All these forgotten details had been hiding under the noise of pretending. I ordered takeout from a new place. Watched a movie I'd been meaning to see without worrying if she'd like it. Laughed at parts one didn't have to explain. Fell asleep on the couch with the dog curled at my feet. The peace wasn't loud. It didn't crash in. It crept. And once it arrived, it stayed. 3 weeks later, I started therapy. Not because I was broken, but because I was tired of being quiet with myself. My therapist asked me when I first knew the marriage was over. I told her, when I left the key in the bowl and didn't feel afraid. We talked for an hour. About grief. About rage. About how it's possible to miss a person and still be glad they're gone. About how some ghosts don't haunt you, they free you. She smiled at that. Said it was a good place to begin. Months passed. I changed the apartment. Repainted the walls. Bought different furniture. Smaller. Simpler. More me. I started going on long walks at night. Not to escape anything. Just to feel the rhythm of my own footsteps again. I even joined a small community writing group on Wednesdays. They meet in the back of a bookstore, where the coffee's weak but the stories are strong. There's a woman there named May. Quiet. Thoughtful. Wears oversized sweaters and reads poetry like it's a prayer. We've talked a few times. Nothing romantic. Not yet. But I don't flinch at the idea anymore. It's strange. I used to think I needed closure from her. Now I understand. I never needed her apology. I just needed my own permission to move forward. Sometimes, I still think about the version of me that sat on the floor that night, staring at a text message, wondering what came next. He didn't know it then, but that moment wasn't an ending. It was an invitation. To rebuild. To rest. To finally live a life that wasn't waiting to be chosen. And now? Now I don't wait at the door. I walk right through it.